Star Citizen just got native VR support, and it's been the headline everyone's been talking about to the point where it's almost completely overshadowed the engineering overhaul in the 4.5 patch. And I get why. VR is exciting, it's flashy, and for a lot of people it feels like a dream feature finally showing up after years of not-so-patient waiting. But all of that excitement has also created a bit of a split in the community. If you've got a VR-capable PC and a headset, this feels like Christmas. If you don't, it can feel like you're suddenly on the outside looking in. And that's why I want to talk about something that isn't getting nearly as much attention. If you want more immersion in Star Citizen, VR isn't your only option. Today I want to talk about VR versus head tracking, and more importantly, what each one actually gives you when you sit down to play. Full disclosure before we go any further, I have relationships with both Pimax and Tobii Eye Tracker. I like both products, I use both, and I wouldn't light my credibility on fire pretending otherwise. You'd be shocked how many sponsorships I turned down. Automatic blinds, random tech nonsense. I even got offered an official watch sponsorship once. Unreal. If it shows up on this channel, it's because it actually makes sense for you guys. After spending a lot of time with both VR and head tracking in Star Citizen, I can confidently say these two systems don't really try to do the same thing, even if on paper they look like they're chasing the same goal. Head tracking has been part of Star Citizen for a long time now, and it's one of those features you stop noticing once it's dialed in. You move your head slightly, your view responds, and that's it. You're still anchored to your monitor, your controls feel exactly the same, and maybe most importantly for some people, you can still physically see them. Your keyboard, your mouse, your HOTAS, whatever you're running. Your brain isn't being asked to reinterpret where you are in space. It adds awareness without demanding attention. There are also a ton of adjustments you can make with head tracking in Star Citizen. You can tune sensitivity, dead zones, how much movement translates into view changes. Once it's set up properly, it just fades into the background and lets you play. For long sessions, especially combat-heavy ones, that matters more than people realize. VR is the opposite experience. The second you put the headset on, the rest of the world disappears. That isolation is a huge part of the immersion, but it's also a commitment. Scale hits immediately. Ships feel enormous in VR in a way they never really do on a flat screen. Walking through a ship suddenly has depth and distance that Star Citizen has always struggled to convey on a monitor. It's immediate and it's intense, and no matter how much I try, I can't really show you that on video. VR is one of those things you have to experience to fully understand. But that immersion doesn't come free. And I'm not just talking about the cost of entry. VR asks more of you physically and mentally. You're suddenly aware of how much you're moving your head, how long you've been sitting or standing, and how your tolerance for motion holds up over time. Even with comfort settings dialed in, it's more demanding, especially in longer sessions. And sometimes it's just inconvenient. Needing to hit a specific key that's nowhere near WASD while you can't see your hands can be a pain in the ass. Flying is where the contrast between these two really becomes clear. With head tracking, flying feels efficient. You glance at MFDs, you check radar, you track targets, and everything stays predictable. It works incredibly well for combat and high workload situations because nothing about your control scheme changes. VR flying feels incredible in a different way. Looking around the cockpit, leaning into turns, visually tracking targets, it all feels natural and immersive. But there are trade-offs. Small movements suddenly matter more, fatigue can creep in faster, and you lose visual access to your inputs. If you fly keyboard and mouse, that can be a real limitation when you need precise, fast movements. With a HOTAS setup, it's better, but you still need to have everything memorized. But FPS gameplay pushes that divide even further. Head tracking mostly stays out of the way. Your mouse aim behaves exactly how you expect, and your muscle memory still carries you. Personally, I even turn off head tracking when I aim down sights because I want the same precision as everyone else. I want a quick, automatic, dialed-in sight picture. VR introduces a layer Star Citizen isn't fully built around yet. You're still using mouse and keyboard, but now your head movement is tied directly into how you perceive aiming and positioning. It's more immersive, but right now it's also a disadvantage. Like in real life, you actually have to line up the sights to shoot accurately, while non-VR snaps to perfect aim instantly. That might change in the future, but today it's a real trade-off in competitive situations. Theater mode ends up being a really important piece of the puzzle. Being able to drop back into a virtual screen inside the headset lets you keep the immersion of VR without committing to it all the time. If FPS combat, inventory management, or something else starts getting frustrating, You can switch modes instantly. And let's be honest, the inventory in Star Citizen already sucks. I didn't think it was possible, but it's somehow even worse in VR. Theater mode saves you from that, and it's one of the reasons VR feels usable right now instead of just a novelty. At the end of the day, what I really like about where Star Citizen is right now is that we have options. If you want full immersion and you're willing to deal with the issues, VR is incredible. If you want comfort, efficiency, and long sessions without thinking about your hardware, head tracking is still a fantastic choice. For me personally, I use both. When I'm streaming or recording B-roll, I stick with head tracking so the viewing experience stays clean and consistent. But when I'm by myself and not worrying about capture, there's nothing quite like getting some VR time in. I'm not going to tell you one is better than the other because it really comes down to how you play and what you value. And if you've already made up your mind after all that, I do have a referral code that'll save you up to $120 on a Pimax headset. They are by far the most powerful VR headsets in the world, and I have a guide to configuring them to work in Star Citizen. For head tracking, I'd recommend a Tobii eye tracker. I don't have a referral link, but they usually go on sale a few times a year. But even at full retail, it's in the same ballpark as buying a high-end 2TB NVMe SSD. And for what it adds to the experience, I think it's worth the price. If this video helped you make sense of your own setup, do me a favor and give it a like and share it. YouTube won't push my videos out widely unless people share them as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the verse.